Hello everyone and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Tuesday, November 13th, 2018. On today's episode we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
Guys, let's get into it. We got a lot of news to catch up on since yesterday was the water cooler. Let's start off with a story that broke over the weekend, and that is that John Lasseter is looking for work, and he may be taking one of our jobs on this podcast. Brad, what's going on here?
Well, we're definitely not trying to hire John Lasseter. That's for sure.
The offer is not out to John Lasseter.
It's been about a year since John Lasseter announced that he was going to be taking a leave of absence from Pixar Animation. And then after that, very shortly after that was when the reports came out of some employees complaining of, quote, grabbing, kissing, and making comments about physical attributes of female employees. So Lasseter eventually ended up stepping back from Pixar completely, and will no longer be affiliated with Disney or Pixar by the end of the year. However, it looks like since he will soon be leaving, that he's looking for, I guess, the next part of his career and a new job. And so word on the street is apparently he took a meeting at WME Entertainment, the talent agency, and I guess he told the people there his side of the accusations and kind of outlined the hopes that he has for what he wants to do next. It's not really clear what that is. No specifics were provided, but the website Cartoon Brew noticed that Lasseter had been meeting with some people on certain animation projects. Nothing really specific, but there are obviously some people who are still willing to work with him despite these allegations that came to light. And apparently one specific thing that he had mentioned during this meeting was that he has an interest in podcasting, though not specifically what he would be podcasting about. One would assume it would be about the animation industry, maybe talking with some of the bigger names in animation, or maybe some of the people who normally don't get the spotlight to talk about, the medium or something like that. But if this is, it's kind of a precarious situation because you have to start wondering, when is it okay for somebody like this to enter back into the industry after, kind of falling from grace like this, if there even is a time, when it should be allowed. And obviously, there are degrees of the serious nature as far as what he did. Obviously, what John Lasseter has been accused of is nowhere near.
Also, it's very tough because none of these accusations have been like public accusations. This have been like things that have happened internally in the Disney company, right? Like this story that I think ran Wall Street Journal or one of the publications, like it didn't actually have any quotes from anybody that wanted to go on record.
Right, but
we have to be very careful in how we word this. I'm not saying he didn't do anything. I'm just saying
that's true. And I think the difference here is that even though there aren't quotes or anything like that, there are more than several accounts, about this happening. And even though this isn't as severe as what Kevin Spacey did or even what Louis C.K. did, this is still definitely a serious situation, and you have to be delicate about it. And it'll be interesting to see, I guess, what it takes for someone like this to be able to come back and who wants to work with him and like what the terms are and that kind of thing. It's a very precarious situation.
It's very weird because John Lasseter was really, becoming basically the modern day Walt Disney. He was the head of, Disney Animation, for the Disney Studios. And it's, now it's weird. He's looking for a job. If I was an animation company, I would be, very hesitant to hire him. But I mean, what you pitched there, the podcast where he talks to people within the animation business, like giving a spotlight on animators and the process of animation, which I think is, to the general public is really not like, I think if you talk to the general public about the process of filmmaking, they probably have some idea of how the film, like how a live action film is put together. But in animation, we even go to these studios and they like give us like, these PowerPoint presentations with video and stuff. And I still don't even think I know the exact workflow of a big Pixar project. So I see that as a benefit to, the consumers and film fanatics, but I guess the question is John Lasseter the right person to be put in that kind of position? And Ben, would you listen to a podcast with John Lasseter?
No, I wouldn't. Not at this point. I mean, I think the thing for me about Lasseter and a lot of these people across the board who have been accused of various levels of misconduct is I feel like there hasn't been enough of an attempt to make amends with the people that he actually harmed. I feel like that kind of thing, which isn't going to be like or it shouldn't be like a public story. That should be one of those things where like the work is being put in by that person on their own time to try to make the situation as right as possible, and like maybe go to some sort of a recovery institute. Put yourself through some sort of therapy. Like you have to do the work. Like make the effort, take the steps to prove that that you are trying, instead of just staying back and being quiet for a few months and then just being like, you know what, now I think I have earned the right to become a public figure again. I personally don't think that it should work that way, and I know that everybody has their own opinions about how this kind of stuff should be handled moving forward and all of that, but that's sort of where I'm sitting right now. I would love to see anybody who's been accused of anything like that actually try to do some work to better themselves and specifically make amends with the people that they've impacted.
Yeah. We'll talk more about the absence that John Lasseter has left later, but I mentioned I was at Disneyland a week ago, and I ate at Pixar Pier. They have a Lamplight Lounge, which is like this restaurant, and there's this like one section of the restaurant that has this display that is like this display for a bunch of wines, and it's so clearly made to display the wines from John Lasseter's vineyards. He used to produce like a wine for each of the Pixar movies, and it's funny because like right now that display had been empty for a long time, and now it's just like they just put random bottles of alcohol in it, and it's like so like the bottles don't fit the perfectly molded things for the wines, and it's kind of sad that Disney is erasing Lasseter from the legacy of this company, but it's understandable that they want to distance themselves. But let's move on to Paramount Ranch, which last week was one of the victims of these horrible fires in California. Ben, you wrote this up for the site. What do we know?
Yeah, so Paramount Ranch was the filming location for almost 500 movies and TV shows over the years. I guess before we even get to this, we should just say that obviously our thoughts and prayers and hearts and minds and everything are with the people who, like the actual human beings who have suffered tremendous loss in all of these fires, which are all over California. I think there are three really, decent sized ones still. And
there's been dozens of deaths and horrible losses. Like you see, like even my feed is mostly like filmmakers and stuff, and seeing like Scott Derrickson, his house like just burnt down, and it's just horrible.
Yeah, there was a picture yesterday, I think, of Gerard Butler, who was standing in front of the ashes of his home. And it's obviously not just people in like the Hollywood community as well. I mean, that's like a lot of the Malibu area had been evacuated, and there are a ton of people up in Northern California who are suffering from the Camp Fire, which is like the most destructive and deadly one in the state's history. So I mean, it's a bad time for people in California right now. But yeah, just sort of like adjacent to that, movie related, is the Paramount Ranch, which was the site for filming for projects like Westworld and Gunsmoke and Gunfight at the OK Corral, and a ton of like classic old westerns and shows like Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman filmed there. And yeah, this entire area has burned in the Santa Monica Mountains. I think I saw a tweet yesterday that said something like a huge percentage of the national park lands in the Santa Monica Mountains has already has gone up in smoke, essentially, which is obviously, really, really terrible. And again, we hope everybody is staying safe out there. I know it's affecting a lot of people. I think even Jeff Canada, this last Filmcast, is like pretty close to the fires. Yeah. So our hearts are with them.
Now, I know you and your wife, Amy, like to go hiking and stuff. Have you ever been to the Paramount Ranch in that area?
I've not, and I'm now obviously like really upset with myself that I didn't go earlier. I think last year or maybe even earlier this year, I was doing some research into it and thinking that would be a really cool place to go because it was like open to the public. You could just go and walk around the old like Western towns and stuff that were there. We've been hiking a lot in that area, but I've never been to Paramount Ranch specifically. So yeah. This is it's man. I mean, again, it's like it's just a bunch of movie sets, and it pales in comparison to like the actual human cost of what's going on. But it's still pretty sad from like a historical perspective.
Yeah, and California has a history of movie sets going on fire. You know, the original Clockhouse Square from Back to the Future has been replaced, I think, 2 times at this point from horrible fires. I have visited Paramount Ranch on a number of times. It was always a fun place to visit and bring family who are, visiting town, family and friends visiting town. But it was kind of like this old Western town that was built many years ago. So it was kind of rickety and falling down. I'm kind of hoping that some production goes to this location. Like if Westworld needs to return to that church in that area, I hope that like some kind of production can go there and help with the rebuilding effort of that area, because it was a really cool area. But
yeah, that would be really nice to see, somebody like HBO put up the money to reconstruct some of that stuff. That would be a really cool move on their part. And even like I forgot to mention the set of MASH, the classics TV show, that was also in that area as well. Not right at Paramount Ranch, but definitely in that area. And my wife and I had actually been to that one, and that set has just been sort of overtaken by the flames as well. So, a lot of
aren't there like abandoned vehicles and stuff out there?
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to A Star Is Born. This is a huge hit, and apparently an extended cut might be in the works. Brad, you're at this up for the site. What do we know?
Indeed. Star Is Born, obviously the huge deal right now. It's going to be a major awards contender. It's got some pretty decent box office legs. Critics and audiences are loving it. And it sounds like there might be an extended cut coming our way at some point if cinematographer Matthew Libatique is going to be believed. He recently had an interview with our friends over at the Film Stage, and he had talked about how he had seen several different cuts of the movie while Bradley Cooper was working on it. He actually saw 5 different cuts of the movie before it ended up being finished. And apparently, after he discussed, watching the evolution of the movie as it came together, he said, quote, "I think they're actually doing a new cut, a director's cut, and putting some stuff back in. I think there's always concern about length, but for him, I think it was mostly the concern about what am I stepping outside the forward narrative of this love story, and when am I stepping outside the area that you have one character ascending, another descending. I think that's all he was doing when doing different cuts, was trying to find that soul." So it sounds like there might be a different version of A Star Is Born that puts more footage back into the movie, maybe it fleshes out the characters even more than what we saw in the movie. The movie itself already clocks in at 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I don't know. I feel like it might be interesting to see what was cut and see them put it back in there, especially if there's more extended music moments, which I would imagine would be, a large chunk of the footage that maybe got cut.
I mean, judging by the soundtrack, there probably is, right? Yeah,
exactly. So if that's what he's going to put back in there, I'd be very interested to see what it is. But 2 hours and 15 minutes is already a pretty long movie, so I'm not sure how much he would want to add in necessarily. And there's also no indication as to, like, first of all, there's no confirmation if this is happening, if Matthew Libatique is right in that they're actually working on a director's cut of the movie. But there's also no indication as to when we might see it, if it'll be something that gets released in theaters at some point, or if it'll just be something that is on the Blu-ray DVD release. It's that remains to be revealed.
Yeah, this stuff has typically in the past been done to get people to double dip or buy the home video release. Although if this is an award contender, I can totally see them doing a theatrical release of this. I'm wondering, I don't know, Ben, do you think, would you go to see an extended cut of this in theaters?
I don't know. I really liked the movie, but I'm not sure. It's not necessarily a movie that that for me would require a second viewing because I feel like the story is so simple. If it was something that was a little bit more like I don't know, labyrinthine, where I was like, I felt like like Inception or something, where I feel like I needed to see it again to like fully grasp it. Then sure, that would be a really cool opportunity to see it with some like icing on the cake. But I don't know. I like the music, but I feel like a lot of people will just listen to the soundtrack, and as they have been since it came out. So I'm not sure if they would go back if general audiences would go back and see it again just to have a couple of those scenes padded out. I don't know. What do you think, Peter? Would you see it again?
I really like the first half of this movie. The second half, not so much. So if this footage could improve the second half, if it could make it I don't know, more nuanced, like the first 30 minutes, I feel like I would be down, but I'm betting that's not the case. Although there are a lot of things in the second half as, Lady Gaga's character kind of becomes a star, and there's, things going on with her tour and her record and stuff. And there's stuff that's like hinted at, and I'm wondering like if there was more to that was being shot, because it almost feels like we're getting like little bits and pieces of things that like subplots that didn't make it into the film, of like how Lady Gaga is kind of her character's kind of changing herself or evolving. So I don't know, I might be interested. I'd probably wait till it's on home video to check it out and rent it. But let's move on from that to true crime, which CBS All Access is doing a new true crime show, which will apparently let you view the case in a different way than any other true crime TV show has in the past. What do we know?
Yeah, so basically CBS All Access is creating a new show called Interrogation, and it is based on a true story that spanned more than 3 decades, in which a young man was charged and convicted of brutally murdering his mother, and each episode is structured around an interrogation taken directly from the actual police case files. So the way that this is going to be different from a lot of other true crime stuff is that CBS All Access, which as a streaming service has up till this point only released things, the original content with like at the rate of 1 episode per week. They're actually going to release 9 of the 10 episodes, the first 9 episodes, all at once, and let each individual viewer watch and sort of explore this story at their own pace in the way that they want to. So you can sort of bounce around based on your own interests or theories or what have you from this story and watch each individual episode, in whatever order you want. And they're holding the finale until a later date. And I assume that's going to be the one that sort of answers all the questions and wraps things up. But they're giving you the opportunity to explore this and try to come to your own conclusion before they actually spill the beans on, the final real conclusion of this case.
I think this could actually be pretty cool. Like, I feel like, if you had a pilot episode or the first episode that kind of sets up, the suspects and whatever, and then the other episodes are like, this one's about this guy, this one going down this avenue. And like, you could kind of like a detective, choose which avenues you're taking going through the case. I think that could be quite compelling. Ben, I know you're a big fan of the true crime, genre. Yeah. Is this something that would appeal to you?
So what you just described is essentially the Steven Soderbergh project Mosaic that came out. I think it was very late last year or early this year. I'll have to check on that. But it was like it started as an app, and it did exactly what you just said. It basically started you off with a first episode that sort of laid the groundwork and then gave people the option of like branching narratives and how to explore the story from there. And I just never got around to doing that, even though the concept does sound really interesting and compelling to me. I just didn't find the time to do it. And I think later, if people were like, wait a second, I recognize this, it's because HBO cut all of the episodes into one linear thing and then released that on HBO, so maybe people have seen that and didn't get a chance to sort of play around with the storyline in the app as it was originally intended. But so I don't know. This one sounds like it's going to be a complete free for all. It's not. It sounds like it's not even going to put that first episode, like make you watch the first episode first. It sounds like you could just jump in at episode 5 and try to figure out what the hell is going on. So I don't know. I feel like you would probably need some sort of groundwork to get started and like establish the baseline facts of what's going on. But yeah, I'm also intrigued by this.
That is so weird. Like I do like the idea. I'm not sure if it would be a good idea, but I like in concept the idea that there could be a series that I watch on Netflix and you watch on Netflix and Brad watches on Netflix, and we're watching it all in a different order. Now I guess that probably would only work maybe with like an anthology series like Black Mirror, but maybe there's a way of doing that so it would work. But I don't know. The other side of me that, you know, studied screenwriting and all that, like, knows the escalation of plots and stuff, and I feel like that probably would not work that well. But
well, it's worth mentioning that this show, which is again called Interrogation, is going to be on CBS All Access, and Netflix, actually, as I mentioned in this article, is planning to create shows that use that choose your own adventure storytelling model for adults. So we haven't seen any of those yet, but we do know that an upcoming episode of Black Mirror is going to be one of those things. And then also, I think it's 20th Century Fox that's developing a choose your own adventure movie that is in the works right now too. So it sort of remains to be seen how this is going to catch on in a larger way, but it seems like that choose your own adventure storytelling style is starting to slowly eke its way into pop culture.
I'm very interested in this. Okay, let's talk about Roma. We've talked in the past on this podcast of how Alfonso Cuarón's next movie is going to hit theaters, but apparently it's not going to be in Alamo Drafthouse theaters due to Netflix's strict specifications. Brad, you wrote about this for the site. What do we know?
Indeed. So Roma is a Netflix movie, so obviously it'll be hitting the streaming service in December. But before that, it's going to be playing in limited theaters around the country starting on November 21st. However, the locations will be a little bit harder to get to, only really in major markets, simply because Netflix isn't doing like this big wide release, and most of the larger theater chains aren't willing to play ball with Netflix because of the window between hitting theaters and arriving in the Netflix library. So Netflix has been trying to strike deals with a lot of the independently owned theater chains outside of AMC and Regal and Cinemark, but apparently they hit a little bit of a snag with Alamo Drafthouse, which is one of the favorite theater chains among cinephiles, and it's mostly because the things that they were asking for, Alamo just didn't feel like they could easily adhere to. Apparently, not only is Netflix wanting the movie to play in 70mm, during the entire run in the theater if possible, but they're trying to four-wall the theaters, which means that Netflix is basically renting the entire theater out, and they'll be taking all of the money from the ticket sales for themselves, as opposed to splitting the ticket costs with the theaters, which is normally what happens when a movie is distributed and sent out to theaters. And Drafthouse doesn't do that with any of their theaters. And the other thing specifically with this Alamo Drafthouse location, when they wanted to show it in Brooklyn, is they wanted Roma to play in their largest auditorium, which is where they can project in 70mm for 4 straight weeks, which meant no other movies would be allowed to play in that theater. And since that's their biggest auditorium, and this is during the prime holiday season when families are going out to the movies all the time, that's kind of a big ask to put an awards-driven drama that really isn't necessarily it's a high-profile movie in our world, but isn't something that's going to draw in, families as much as a holiday blockbuster or something like that. So you're going to be losing money out in that way, especially when it's a movie that's coming out in Netflix in, less than a month. So Drafthouse just couldn't work out a deal with Netflix, and so they just declined to be able to show it. So now in New York, it'll be playing at the IFC Center in Manhattan instead.
But if Netflix was four-walling this Alamo Drafthouse theater, then that means they are basically buying out that theater for those 4 weeks. So I don't understand why the Alamo Drafthouse would be upset about that, because that's almost like guaranteeing that you have a sold-out theater for 4 weeks.
I don't know. I would imagine there's probably more complications to the deal than that. But yeah, I'm not sure.
What do you think? Do you think Netflix is being too picky?
I mean, yes and no. Like, obviously, you want the movie to play in the way that you want it to play. That's their decision. But like, when they're only going to be doing this for a short period of time and it's already playing in limited locations, like you would think that you would want it to be as easy as possible for people to be able to see this movie, and not create problems with the theater chains when they already have too many problems with theater chains who don't want to work with them anyway.
Yeah, I feel, I know a lot of people are jumping on this and getting on Netflix's back over this, but my feeling is that it's probably in the contract. Alfonso Cuarón probably wanted, a certain amount of 70 millimeter, presentations over 4 weeks and Netflix is just trying to satisfy this deal in a way that will work for them.
Well, what's weird is that, it's now that it's playing at the IFC Center in Manhattan instead of this Alamo Drafthouse location in Brooklyn, it's not playing in 70 millimeter at IFC Center. So I don't know what the deal is there.
Yeah. Interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on this as Netflix decides not to do more theatrical releases in the future. I don't know. I'd be very interested to see if Netflix actually just starts buying a theater chain, because I feel like that would be in their interest. And
they've talked about it before.
Yeah.
We did a whole thing on it, and they were looking into it, but nothing's come of it yet.
Yeah, it would be very cool if our Netflix subscription could, get us into, could act as like kind of a movie pass or AMC A-list. But let's move on very briefly to The Mandalorian. We got a bunch of casting news and rumors. Brad, you wrote this up for the site. What do we know?
Well, today we got confirmation that Pedro Pascal, who starred in Kingsman: The Golden Circle and also is in a unique indie sci-fi movie called Prospect, is indeed the star of The Mandalorian. He'll be playing the lone gunfighter that is described in the official synopsis. And so he will be donning some of that cool Boba Fett-style armor. But that's pretty much all we know about his character so far. We don't have many details at all about the Mandalorian as far as specifics of the story. All we know is that it takes place far away from the authority of the New Republic. So we're probably looking at more of the seedy, darker side of the Star Wars galaxy. And that's, it'll be interesting to see. And it goes to show you that, Lucasfilm is really leaning towards having a more diverse cast. This comes on the heels of hearing that Diego Luna will be leading that other Star Wars series that will feature Cassian Andor from Rogue One. So they're clearly trying to expand the roster they have as far as, especially when it comes to bringing in Hispanic talent to lead their shows.
Yeah.
And then on the rumor side of things, there's a chance that Carl Weathers, Apollo Creed from the Rocky franchise, might have some kind of role in The Mandalorian. This is a rumor that comes from Making Star Wars, and they were the ones who actually heard about Pedro Pascal being considered for a role in The Mandalorian to begin with. So there's a decent chance this could turn out to be true, because their sources have proved to be pretty reliable. Unfortunately, because everything about The Mandalorian is so tight under wraps, we have no idea what kind of character he could be playing or anything like that. He's definitely up there in the years, so a live-action character seems slightly out of question simply because he's not much of an action star anymore, but that doesn't mean that there aren't characters that he could play as live action, especially if they do maybe a riff on like him being some kind of aged mercenary, maybe as a nod to his role in Predator or something like that. But Carl Weathers also has a history of doing some voice work too. He has a voice on the Disney XD series Star versus the Forces of Evil. He had a voice role in Toy Story of Terror, so maybe there's a chance he'll end up voicing some kind of alien character or a droid or something like that. He would even make a cool, villain, somebody who maybe is like an overseer of and lets other people do his bidding. Something like that would be cool too. But again, this is all speculation because everything about The Mandalorian is being very secretive right now, and we're just waiting to hear more officially from Disney and Lucasfilm to find out more about it.
I just think it's crazy that we're, probably over a month into production and we only know for sure, confirmed, one of the actors in the show. And I've heard that, this show isn't just, unknown actors. It's, people, names we know. So it's crazy. I like Pedro Pascal from the show Narcos. Was he also in Game of Thrones?
He was, yes.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. So anyways, let's move on to some trailer reactions because we had some big trailers hit this week. Let's start first with Toy Story 4. We've gotten 2 teaser trailers thus far. One of them introduced this new character that's made from a plastic spork, and the next one introduced a duck and a bunny played by Key and Peele. I'm curious what you guys think of this. Let's start with Ben.
I was not really a fan of the first teaser that introduced us to, what is it, Forky? I think is that character's name.
It should be Sporky because he really is a spork, right?
Yeah, I think that's. Let me look this up and make sure this is right.
It's Forky. It is Forky.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, already they've got a strike against them in the name category there. But I just feel like it's not a very good teaser. The teaser that introduced Ducky and Bunny, the Key and Peele characters, was a lot more fun, and it seemed like an actual teaser to me. It was like it's these characters basically doing riffs on their Key and Peele sketches that they've done before, but as these new characters at a carnival, and then Woody and Buzz roll up and they mess with them about the to infinity and beyond catchphrase, and it's really entertaining, and it's great to hear those guys together again and riffing like they did back in the days of Key and Peele. I love that show, and I am excited to see how those characters are incorporated into this action. I think that's the thing that has me the most excited about Toy Story 4 at this point. And that Forky thing, I could take it or leave it. Even though Tony Hale is providing from Veep and Arrested Development is providing the voice of that character, just the introduction in that teaser did absolutely nothing for me. But Brad, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same arena that you are. I love the one with Key and Peele, and then I don't know. I just don't know what to expect with Toy Story 4 and with this character. I can see how having a character like this who isn't explicitly a toy but is treated like a toy, and like maybe there's some kind of significant, meaning or theme behind like, having sort of an identity crisis or, kind of choosing to be what you want to be. And like that kind of thing, maybe will be something that comes through as the message for kids in this movie. But I don't know. It's like I need a lot of convincing to get excited about Toy Story 4 simply because Toy Story 3 was such a wonderful, cap on what would have been the Toy Story trilogy. And it's going to take a lot for me to really think that this is something that's necessary. And the only thing I think that has me intrigued so far is that first poster of Woody, that teaser poster, made it feel like maybe this could be Woody's last ride, so to speak. Maybe like they'll send him off in even some more grand way. I guess I don't know, but it's I'm intrigued, but not necessarily excited yet.
Well, guys, you can't underestimate Pixar, especially when it comes to sequels for Toy Story movies, because they've both times they've gone at bat, they've grand slammed it, in my opinion. And that said, watching these 2 teaser trailers, I'm a little bit worried. Not that I don't like Forky. I think that character could be interesting in the ways that Brad kind of hinted at. Key and Peele's characters, and I love Key and Peele, but you could have told me that this was a teaser trailer for a Secret Life of Pets 2 movie, and like I would have believed you. Like, these characters feel like something from Illumination Entertainment. Maybe it's because they're more abrasive than we're used to in this Toy Story world. Maybe it's because the comedy feels more contemporary and not classical as most of the comedy that takes place in the Toy Story world. But something seems off to me. And the other weird thing is we'd been hearing for a long time that this story is a love story. between Bo Peep and Woody, that is the core of the movie, that John Lasseter, when he was developing it, it was, a love song to his wife Nancy, which, now makes us feel all icky. But it's weird because now these trailers come out, the trailers paint a different vision for this movie. And also there is this plot synopsis that basically says when Bonnie adds a reluctant new toy called Forky to her room, a road trip adventure alongside old and new friends will show Woody how big the world can be for a toy. That doesn't sound like a love story, but maybe they're hiding that aspect of it. Maybe they're downplaying it because of the Lasseter issues that we talked about earlier. What do you guys think? Do you think, like, with these Pixar movies, there's sometimes that they are completely reinvented, like 3 or 4 times within the production of this movie? And when Josh Cooley came on board, he's the guy that did the Inside Out short, Riley's First Date. Maybe this thing got completely reworked? Or do you think, like, they're just hiding that thing because they don't want people talking about Lasseter?
I wouldn't be surprised if they minimized those aspects, that romance aspect in the final movie because of that. But I don't know. I wonder if they were like too far along in production when the Lasseter news came out for them to scrap that completely and still hit the release date, which is next year, June of 2019. So, I mean, it seems like if they had to scrap it in let's say late 2017 and completely remake the movie from the ground up, I don't know if, even with as great as Pixar is, I don't even know if 2 years is enough time for them to do that.
They've done stuff in less. I'm also curious with you, Ben, because I mentioned that this feels, that second trailer, which you actually liked, felt more like an Illumination entertainment movie, and I know that you really did not like The Secret Life of Pets.
That is correct.
Am I wrong on this? Or
I see where you're coming from. You might be right. But for me, I guess I like those guys a lot, and I like the idea of because the first 3 Toy Story movies were so good, and especially, as Brad mentioned, that third one sort of tied things off so perfectly. I think you have to do something different to sort of justify coming back to this well again. And if that means, adding a little bit more of a contemporary style of humor into the mix to differentiate it from previous entries, like, who knows, this might not be the very last one. This could be the start of a new trilogy or something. We don't know exactly what they have planned. So I don't know. I'm trying to go over in my mind and think about all of the comedy in the first 3 movies in 30 seconds and try to think of, off the top of my head, there's anything like this in there. And
the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head is there's like a Jurassic Park joke that feels like kind of too contemporary for the movie. I don't know, Brad. What about you?
I think that if you go back and look at the first movie, especially, there's plenty of contemporary comedy, especially when it comes to the rivalry between Buzz and Woody. Like, because Woody's kind of a dick in the first movie. And he was even more of a jerk before they like toned it down and made him a little bit more likable. And you've got Don Rickles as Mr. Potato Head, who's always insulting people and that kind of thing. I think there's plenty of contemporary comedy. I think it's great to have these characters like this, mixing it up a little bit. We haven't had characters like this, and I think that's something that is actually exciting and interesting, so that we're not getting the same old stuff. And I feel like the quality here is not along the lines to warrant the comparison to Secret Life of Pets or anything that Illumination does. Because stuff that Illumination does...
To be fair, the Secret Life of Pets teaser trailer was amazing.
I haven't watched it yet because
the for the first movie.
Oh, I actually thought the one for the second one was okay. Like, that one, to me, was better than the first one. But
oh, really?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't get the love for that trailer, because to me it was just, hey, let's take all of the things that people laugh at in YouTube videos featuring pets and just animate it. There's nothing unique about it, and the movie didn't do anything to change my mind. So, but I think that the comedy here is much more what's the word I'm looking for?
It fits. I think I'm right there with you, Brad. I think I'm leaning more toward Brad on this one, Peter. And I know that I think the idea of like contemporary comedy is something that you've had an issue with in previous movies too. I remember that was like one of your chief complaints about The Last Jedi.
I do not have a problem with contemporary comedy.
Well,
I just feel like when you
integrated into certain things.
Yeah, when you establish a world in the franchise, I feel like there should be, just as there is kind of like a style for that world, and there is like, the character, like there's kind of like a style guide for everything. There should be a style guide for the comedy. I feel like in tone, and I feel like in Star Wars there was a little weirdness with the comedy. I don't know. I'm judging way too much from the teaser trailer here, and
which, by the way, will probably not even be in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the other thing too. Is it's just like, it's set to introduce these characters. I feel like it does a good job of that, and so who knows how they're actually going to be incorporated into the movie itself and what those specific jokes are going to be. But I think for what this is, I was pleased with it.
I hate to prolong this because we're already going way over, but I do have a question to you, because when this trailer yesterday came out with Forky, there was a lot of negative buzz on Twitter, and I'm kind of wondering, do you think that's because people don't like this character, or do you think it's because people don't like these like teaser trailers that we used to grow up on that didn't really reveal much of the thing? It was kind of more of what it is, a tease.
Brad, do you have any thoughts about that?
I don't know. I thought that was an interesting question when you posed it, and I do wonder if maybe people just expect to get more from a trailer nowadays than being teased from it, simply because they know a project already exists, so a tease just doesn't feel as satisfying, whereas sometimes when a teaser trailer would arrive, we didn't necessarily know the kind of things that we do know now thanks to the internet being around. I don't know. I don't know maybe if the patience has worn thin for teaser trailers, or if maybe this particular teaser trailer just didn't really hit well with the audience. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm a fan of teaser trailers, so I hope they don't go away. But it seems to me that Hollywood has tested them and has kind of decided that audiences don't, they want to be sold from minute one. So, anyways, we have one more trailer to talk about. Let's talk about it quickly. Detective Pikachu. This is a movie, based in the Pokemon series of games and TV show. And I think when this was announced, everybody was kind of making fun of it. Like, why not make the Pokemon Go movie? Why make Detective Pikachu? But then this trailer came out, and I think won over the entire internet. Brad, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it looks interesting. And this is coming from somebody who didn't grow up playing Pokemon, doesn't really care much about the games. I do play Pokemon Go, but mostly just because I just like the idea of, a game that was like forced you to walk around real locations and that kind of thing. And it was kind of something to do, and it's fun to just play on your phone when you're out and about. But I by no means have like an extended interest in Pokemon beyond that. What I know about Pokemon, I've learned either from my cousin who grew up on it or from playing Pokemon Go. But I don't know, there's something that's kind of charming and interesting about this movie. It feels like the kind of like fantasy adventure movies that you used to have in the 80s with kids, but just with contemporary comedy that Peter probably doesn't like.
Hey, but, I like contemporary comedy.
But yeah, I don't know. The only thing is that it's very odd to hear Ryan Reynolds' voice coming out of Pikachu's body, and as cool as it is to see a somewhat photorealistic recreation of what the Pokemon look like in the real world, it's also kind of jarring. So I don't know. I'm intrigued, but also kind of weirded out.
I don't know. Pikachu looks so fluffy, and I want to have a Pikachu after seeing this trailer.
I'm sure you'll get one.
Yeah, the other Pokemon look a little weird. Ben, what are your thoughts on this?
I also didn't grow up. I feel like I was just a little bit like a year or two too old for the Pokemon craze when that happened. So a lot of people around me were sucked into that world, and I've never played any of the games. I've never seen any of the movies or anything. I don't know really anything about it. So, coming into this completely fresh, I'm sort of baffled by it, I think. But at the same time, I see the bones of like an entertaining movie here. I think it does seem weird. We were talking about it like, this has been a worldwide phenomenon for 20 years or more than that. And this is the first movie that they make is a Detective Pikachu movie. It's like really strange from a business and creative standpoint, I think. And just like a weird Hollywood anomaly, I think, like this. But I agree, like the character designs all seem kind of cool. And I imagine if I grew up with any relationship at all to these characters, I would be like losing my mind. Like this looks, I mean, I would think that seeing, a Charizard or whatever, I would be kind of excited and interested to see how that character would be translated to the screen. So, just on an aesthetic level, I kind of like the look of it. It's like these characters, it's like Rocket Raccoon walking around in Blade Runner or something. Or maybe like Winnie the Pooh or something, like a softer, cuddlier creature walking around in a sci-fi looking world like that. So what do you think, Peter?
I mean, basically you guys have said what I think. I'm also someone that didn't grow up with Pokemon. We should have had HD on here because our trademark millennial of the Slash Film staff. She wrote up actually this great piece looking at every Pokemon in this trailer because there's a ton. And I'll link that in the show notes. But I don't know, I'm very intrigued by this. I've actually talked to some people who saw a test screening of this, and they say it was actually a lot of fun, and they said it was the best video game movie ever, which it isn't, high praise. There really hasn't been a great video game movie, but who would have thought that Detective Pikachu might be worthy of that honor? I'm curious to see it when it comes out. But we have gone way over our time slot for today. So I'm just going to end it here. You can find more of all the stories we've talked about on today's podcast on slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. This podcast is Slash Film Daily. It's published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to peter@slashfilm.com. And please go to our iTunes page, give us a 5-star review, write us, a couple sentences of why you love this podcast. That would help us quite a bit. Tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you tomorrow.